Welcome to Navigating a Broken Vessel. I'm Dave Harris, and I want to welcome you to another great episode. Now, just a little while ago, we were talking to Tifani Holt. And Tifani Holt, she was telling us her story about her faith crisis, the things she went through. And I thought about it, and I thought, wouldn't it be good for us to get another perspective on that same situation? So what I have for us today is I have her husband, Kody Holt. Well, now, welcome you here, Kody.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I appreciate it. Kody, of course, is married to Tifani. He's been married for, how long has it been?
14 years.
14 years. And she told us her story of her faith crisis, the things she went through. I want to hear kind of what it was from your perspective, right? So go ahead and give us a little bit of background, if you don't mind, and tell us kind of the story from your point of view.
Yeah. So it's been a couple of years ago, and I still remember one time, I could tell something was bothering her. And, Tifani, she wears her emotions on her sleeve. She cannot hide anything. And I could tell something was bothering her. And I was like, what's going on? And I remember she asked me a question. And I honestly don't remember what the question was, but it was an obvious question that it's like, hey, I'm not so sure about the church. And I remember thinking...
And when you say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is that fair to say?
Yes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I remember thinking... okay, this is kind of strange. Where's this coming from? And so anyway, we kind of talked through that question, but then one question turned into two questions, which then turned into four questions. And at this point, I was kind of like, okay, I know something's happening here. And so that's kind of how it began as far as that is concerned.
Okay, and you have some children, right? Tell me about your children.
Yeah, so we've got three kids. And they all have birthdays really, really close. And when we're shooting this episode, that is right in the middle of all of their birthdays. And so we've got our youngest daughter, her birthday's coming up, and she's going to be 6 next week. And then we have our next one is just turned 9, and then we have another boy that's just about to turn 13.
So tell me, so you have your children, you've got Tiff, who you've been married to for a few years, a handful of years, over a decade at that point. Something like, was that alarming to you?
Honestly, it was weird. It was a kind of a strange mix of emotions, because I wasn't sure. I was kind of like, maybe this is just some questions, and we all have questions at some point. And Tiff, and when you had talked with her, she had mentioned she was raised in a very, very different way in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints than I was. And so it's very natural that at some point, you branch off on your own, and it's like, okay, now I can kind of start thinking for myself. I can kind of start coming up with my own, testimony and beliefs. And I thought that that's just kind of what was happening, is she was just sort of exploring that, but like I said, it's been, at that time it'd been 12 years or so that we had been married, and now all of a sudden we'd had these questions.
So, and I feel like what you're kind of alluding to is the same kind of thing I would feel like. I feel like questions are good, right? It's good for you to want to learn more, to want to find out more about what's going on. What was different about it, or how did you figure out that it was something different than that?
Yeah. So it kind of turned into more of a why question rather than what does the church teach about this? It was like, why is the church teaching that? It was almost kind of more of a negative type of a question, more of kind of for instead of what is the church's stance on this? What does the church believe about this? It was, well, why does it believe this? Why does it believe that it's, the church with the priesthood? Why does it believe that it's the church that can, has this particular authority and things like that?
So, and I want to be clear. I mean, I think that there's a misconception about people who are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that somehow with a marriage, there's male domination, that kind of a thing. And I want to make sure it's clear that we're not talking about, oh, my wife is stepping off, into questioning why and stuff like that. I mean, it's not that at all. I want to talk about your relationship. How is it that how do you feel like your relationship goes in terms of, whether you mutually parent and that sort of thing? Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see ourselves as equals, and we have different strengths. And we've talked a lot about that, Tiff and I. We've talked about how she's a lot better at certain things than I am, and so she handles those tasks. I'm better at certain things than she is, and so I handle those tasks. But we try to split things up equally. But the key is that we have the same goal. We want the same things. We want the same things for our kids, the same thing for our family, the same thing for our life. We just kind of have different ways that we go about doing that.
So in terms of that, I mean, if a wife comes to a husband and says, "Hey, I'm questioning religion," I think there's two ways that a husband could go. They could be like, "Well, stop thinking that way, right? You will do what I say," that kind of a thing, as opposed to like a "Let me help you through this," or let's walk through this path together," that sort of thing. Maybe there's something else too. I want to hear your perspective on that. If you feel like it's, did you feel like, well, you just need to do things my way, or was it something different?
Yeah, honestly, at the very, very beginning, when she started having these questions and started bringing them to me, I kind of had that thought crossed my mind. It's like, okay, I got to fix this. Like I'm a natural toolbox, not a trash can. Like I am not very good at just listening and not responding and trying to fix things. But I don't know, there was a little something in me that was kind of like, just let her ask the questions, just support her and love her. And it's kind of interesting because very shortly after she started having her faith crisis, like I'm throwing out a date. I don't know if this is true, but like I would say it maybe started in like June or July. It was, sometime in the summer. And then it was in September of that year that I was having my temple recommend interview where you go in with the stake president and you find out if you're worthy to go to the temple. And he could tell something was bothering me. And I told him, I said, look, Tiff is going through a faith crisis right now. And what he said was probably the most profound thing that sustained me through all of this. He looked me right in the eye and he said, Brother Holt, I wish that I could tell you that you're the only one that's going through this, but you're not. But let me tell you what you need to do. He said, the way that you're going to get through this is you're going to go home, you're going to love her, and you're going to keep doing the things that you know are right. And I can promise you that things will work out for you and your family in the eternities. And that was super powerful for me because I was like, no matter what happens, I was just promised by someone that things are going to work out. And I felt it. I felt it deep in my soul. And I knew that and that's something that really kind of helped sustain me through all of this.
So when something like that happens, I mean, I think a lot of times we look at it and we're like, "Oh, wow, now I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is just kind of keep doing what I'm doing and show her some love and things like that." What was it different? I mean, did you feel like, "Okay, I need to walk on eggshells. I need to be careful talking about this conversation," or did you just feel like, "You know what? All things are normal. I'm just going to keep on doing what we've been doing for the last 12 years."
Yeah. Oh, definitely things shifted. Yeah, definitely things were very, very different and had the conversations that we'd have. There were certain things that we did not discuss, certain things that were just very triggering for her. But overall, like we stayed very open through the whole thing. Like I said, there were certain topics that we didn't breach. It's like we're not going to go here because it's just going to end up in us arguing and going to bed angry, and we didn't want to do that. We were very committed to our marriage and to our family through all of that. But yeah, definitely the dynamic shifted.
So let me ask you, because she mentioned, and as far as that, I mean, there is a previous episode on this, and I welcome people to look at that previous episode or to listen to it, to watch it on YouTube, whatever it might be, to hear Tiff's perspective, because I think she's such a beautiful person. She's just all around an awesome person,
Yeah.
and she's willing to just candidly talk about her experience, which I think is great. I wanted to ask you, I mean, because she mentioned it, that she says she started getting into things that she looking back knew she shouldn't have been involved with, whether it be alcohol, drugs, things like that. Uh, as far as your awareness of that happening, how did you approach that and broach those topics?
Yeah. So it was kind of difficult. And in reality, like whether it be substances or whether just her beliefs or her um kind of her actions out in the community, like oftentimes people would react to me as if I was some kind of a victim, that they would come to me and they're like, oh gosh, this has got to be so hard for you. And honestly, like it was, like there were a lot of parts that were very difficult, but I still saw the Tiff that I love. And that never changed. Like she may have been doing some different things, but like we still had the same fun loving relationship. We still got along. We still played games. We still went on vacations and went on trips and things like that. So that in and of itself kind of drove kind of put that other stuff, like the other concerns that you had mentioned, kind of put them on a back burner. That it's like, Tiff's figuring some things out. She's got to figure some stuff out. And then, eventually this is all going to work out. Like I said, I kept going back to that promise that eventually it's all going to work out.
So the stake president says, keep with the love, respond with love. Is that kind of what you did? Is that the tactic you took?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that from that perspective is that I saw everything that Tiff was going through. Like she told me everything. She was very, very open with me, very honest with everything that was happening. So I saw things in a very different way. And she even alludes to this in her episode about that I had my, some questions as well. There was a period of time where I started looking at that and I was like, oh my gosh, she's right. Like how do I answer this question? How do I navigate this? She's brought up this concern and I verified it. Like it's true. How do I get past that? In reality, like it all kind of came down to the fact that I understood her perspective. And that in and of itself is a manifestation of love, that I understood where she was coming from. I may have not fully believed it, but I could see where she was coming from. And I could see that like, hey, you have this question and this concern, and I can see where that concern is coming from. And that I think made it a little easier for me to fully understand what she was going through.
And so it's funny, you bring up a couple of things in there. One of them is that responding with love. And I hear that a lot, right? No matter what a person's going through, respond with love, because it's a natural inclination, I think, sometimes to, like you said earlier, solve the problem. Let's get this solved, right? I remember being on a mission and people would bring stuff up, and my immediate inclination was, let's figure out how to solve this problem, right?
Mm.
So you're dealing with such and such issue. Let's figure out how to immediately solve this problem. And I still have that problem today where I'm just like, all right, let's solve it. Let's solve it. Let's solve it. And what I found, and even in talking to you, and I've seen successes in my own life, is don't worry about solving the problem, just continue to show love, right? And it's not even when I asked you the question earlier, what is that the tactic you took, right? It's not like it's like I'm going to show love because that's what's going to work, right? That's the tool I'm going to grab out of the toolbox, is showing love. It's different than that, isn't it? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, me referring to myself as a toolbox, like immediately that's kind of where my mind goes to, is like, okay, all right, what tools do I have in this box that I can fix this problem with? Whereas love is more something that's just already built in. It's already something that's built into you. And that's just like how you respond to a situation and kind of how we're built, as human beings that are meant to love each other, that's just how we naturally respond to something. When you love somebody as much as I love Tiff, when she brings up a concern, like I said, obviously there's that inclination to go and try and fix the problem, but there's also this inclination of like, hey, she's struggling and I need to be there for her.
And I think to a certain extent, if you don't respond with love, you risk trying to be controlling and mess up their agency and stuff like that. And I think that gets things in a worse situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you this right now. If I would have tried to control that situation, we would not be together today. She needed to go through this. She needed to experience these things. And if I would have tried to control the situation, it would have pushed her away. 100%.
So let me ask you too, though, because you've got your 3 children, how do you navigate that, knowing that, it's a delicate situation. It's a sticky situation. Tell me about how you would navigate things with the children.
Yeah. So we had a number of conversations with our kids. They were aware that mom was struggling with going to church and with different things. And we would talk with them and, we wanted to be fair to them, because it's not like I never ever, whether with our kids or in the community, I never wanted to paint Tifani as a bad person, because she wasn't. Really and honestly, if everyone knew the Tifani that I knew, even all the stuff that she went through, she is not a bad person. She's just the most kind-hearted, sweet person that you'll ever meet. But we would have conversations with our kids and we would say, okay, here's what mom is going through. And we want you guys to be involved in your choice. Do you want to continue going to church? And they did. They felt good when they went to church. And so we allowed them to continue going to church. And experiencing those things and kind of building their own testimonies. It changed a little bit because mom wasn't there all the time, but they felt good going to church. And she was very, very good to support them in that and to say, okay, you want to go to church? That's great. You can go ahead and go to church.
Were there times where things got a little heated? Were there times where like you're like, I got to put my foot down, or this it stops now, or and were there times like that? Were there elements of frustration or things like that?
There were quite a few times where I don't want to necessarily say that I had to put my foot down, but like where I had to kind of point out to her, say like, look, like we really need to kind of change what we're doing here. Like this isn't working. And so like for example, there would be times when, she would, hang out with friends and those friends would kind of come over and hang out. And I'd say, maybe it's not the best idea that we hang out with those people and have them over in our home anymore. Like, we don't want to have our kids being influenced by these people. And so there were instances in which we did have to talk about like, okay, we need to kind of set some boundaries and some rules here for the sake of our marriage, sake of our kids.
It sounds like to me, and I love this. I love this because I'm a huge fan of communication. I'm a huge fan of talking through things. And I love that you say, it's not like I put my foot down and said, you will not have these people in our home ever again. Right. I mean, you talk about how you're like, we're going to have a conversation about this. I'm going to express my opinion, I feel like this isn't the best idea. And I also love the way you phrase it too. It's kind of like, hey, don't you think you shouldn't have these people over? It's kind of more like, hey, maybe this isn't the best idea. It allows for you to communicate, right? And I'm assuming, but you can tell me, I'm assuming that the conversation you had over this specific topic probably lasted a few minutes. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. And that's why I say like, through all of this, Tiff and I were always very open with each other. We would share concerns and we tried really, really hard to give and take because that's what we do in marriage, right? It's not just about you, not just about me. It's not about me. It's not about her. It's about working together to try and achieve the same goal. And so that's what we always tried to do was make sure that I'm supporting her in what she's going through. She's supporting me in what I'm going through. And somehow we make that work and we raise a family together.
So I look at these as trials, right? I look at it like the marriage vows, the classic marriage vows of for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, that kind of a thing. For better or for worse. Marriage is not always, let's go frolic through the flowers and, enjoy some time together, right? There's going to be some hard times. Uh, Tell me, because I always look at things like this as being a crossroads. I always look at it and say, I can take road one where I'm just like, I'm out, I'm done. Thanks so much. Or I can take road two and you look down the path of road two and you're like, wow, that looks scary. There's briars and there's, it's a dirt road that's not well paved and this one's manicured away. It's like, this is the easy route, right? I can do the easy route and just say I'm out, or I can take this road that looks like it's going to be pretty tough. And it's going to be tough. That it's going to be a challenging thing. How do you decide to take the more difficult road?
Well, I think it's kind of like we talked about originally. Like for me, it was all about love. That I love Tiff more than anything in this world, and the fact that she was going through a faith crisis didn't change that. Even at the times when our marriage was really, really rocky and really shaky during that, and I'm sure probably talk a little bit more about that here shortly. But even during those times, I never stopped loving her and she never stopped loving me. We loved each other through this whole thing. And I think that that's what it was, is like, we're going to go through the weeds together. We're going to go through those briars and those sticker burrs and those tumbleweeds. We're going to go through all of that together.
How is it? What about if the situation had been different and she's like, nope, I'm not going to go down that road. We're not going to, I'm going to do my own thing and too bad. I don't want to talk to you anymore. What would you do in that situation?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if we would have made it through that because you had mentioned a few minutes ago that communication is huge. So that's really what kind of kept things going is we kept an open line of communication. We stayed open to each other. We stayed curious to each other's thoughts and ideas. And that's really what kind of made us get through all of this is just that we kept talking about it. We kept communicating.
And I think some people might look at that and be like, well, when you hear her perspective and you just absolutely disagree with it, how do you navigate that, right? When you're just like, oh wow, I can't believe that's a road she's going down. I can't believe that's a decision she's making. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. And honestly, like I got that from a lot of people. Like I had a friend that I know quite well. And they were talking to me one day and they said, "So when are you gonna leave Tiff?" And I said, "What?" And they said, "Well, I mean, if she was my wife and she was doing those things, I would leave her like that. I would not stay with her." And I think that that's where things are a little bit different. Like when you're actually experiencing something, it's very, very different than how you see things on the outside. Because like I've said before, I saw Tiff's perspective. I could see, like, okay, I see where you're coming to this conclusion. I see how you're getting there. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that some of the stuff that we're looking at is maybe kind of flawed. Maybe it doesn't add up quite right. Maybe there's some twists in logic that's making this sound more appealing. But honestly, I could see it. I could see the perspective of where she was coming from. And I think that that's what kind of kept me open to her ideas is just that I could see where she was coming from, even if I didn't fully agree with it.
Some people would say that you met her halfway.
Yeah.
Is that how you would characterize it?
Yeah, absolutely. We tried really, really hard, like I said, to give and take. And it's like, okay, you want to go and live this life. I want to go and live this life. So how do we meet in the middle where we can both be happy? Because I was at that point. I was at that point where I was like, okay, she's not coming back to the church. This is how things are going to be. So how do we navigate this? How do we get through this with our kids? How do we get through this with our families? How do we get through this, in the future?
I did want to ask, you kind of brought up this friend that you were talking to. I know, having seen the situation myself, because you and I are brothers-in-law, right? I mean, you're my wife's brother. And so we would be at family get-togethers and that kind of a thing. I wanted to ask you, and I know you live in a small town, and so
Mhm.
obviously I don't want you to be like, oh wow, I better be careful saying certain things, right? Because I live in a small town, things get around. But I wanted to ask you how you felt that people reacted to your situation. What was there? I mean, shunning and judgmentalness, and that kind of a thing, or were people, responding with love themselves, that kind of a thing?
Yeah. So I definitely think there was a little bit of that negativity out there. And like I said, I always felt like people kind of painted me as a victim of this, that I was a victim of Tiff's, but I never saw myself that way. I never saw myself as being a victim of her. I thought that, because like I said, I could see her perspective. I could see where she was coming from. And I realized like, okay, we just got to work through this. We're going through a little bump in the road. But you're right. We live in a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone knew what was going on. Everybody knew what Tiff was going through. I'm a nurse practitioner, and so I see patients all day long. I literally have people in my exam rooms, and they would say, "So when's your wife coming back to church?" Or, "What happened to her?" And I said, "That's not really a conversation I'd like to have in an exam room." But oftentimes I would kind of defer to that communication part, and I'd say, if you're really that concerned, like maybe you should talk to her. If you're concerned about that, go talk with her and get her perspective and find out why she's doing this. It's not my job to tell you everything that she's going through, but she's happy to tell you about that. But in reality, like it was difficult. I do feel like people treated her a little bit differently. Not everybody, but I do feel like there were people who treated her differently. People who maybe saw her as some type of a bad guy, some evil villain out of a Disney movie that's trying to ruin everything. But honestly, I didn't feel that way. And I always tried to and this sounds really, really bad, but, like, I tried to stand up for her, I tried to, like, when people would say negative things, I would try to say, like, "Look, you don't know what's going on. It's a lot more complex than kind of what you're seeing on the surface level." But for a vast majority, people were very loving and supportive and, like, especially, like, family members were super, helpful and, supportive of her and just expressing love, even though it's like, "Okay, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I love you, and I always will."
And I wanted to ask you that. That was gonna be my next question is what advice would you give to somebody who's kinda outside, but they are aware of the situation, whether it's a small town or not, whether it's family members or whatever? And, do you wanna elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, sure. So the other thing that Tiff didn't ever want to feel like was a charity case, because as soon as she starts kind of stepping away from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, all of a sudden the Relief Society president's showing up for her and her ministers are showing up at the door and all these people are, coming to fellowship her and support her. But really and honestly, the thing that Tiff wanted through all of this was she just wanted people to understand that she was going through something and that she believed in a certain way. And she believed, as she said in her episode, that she was never coming back. And she just wanted people to accept her for who she was. And honestly, like I recognize that's a tall order. That's a lot easier said than done. But really and honestly, I think the advice that I would give to somebody who is in a similar or experiencing a similar situation, somebody who is struggling with not even just their faith, but with anything in general is just talk with them. Like, that's what they want. They want to be understood.
They don't wanna be told what to do.
Right.
Is that fair
They
to say?
do not want to be told. You are exactly right about that. The last thing they want to be told is what to do. And Tiff did get quite a bit of that from certain people in the community is a lot of advice on like, here, this is how you fix your faith crisis. And the intentions were good. And we do appreciate the gestures. But yeah, they don't want to be told what to do. They just want to feel understood. They just want to feel loved.
That, I mean, to a certain extent, based on, my conversation with Tiff and knowing Tiff, I mean, that's kinda what she was going through her whole life was kinda, "This is what you will do, and, what I'm going to tell you what to do," things like that, coming from a lot of different people. Is that fair to say?
So she really honestly felt like she never fully had a testimony. She was relying on her parents' testimony, which oftentimes we do, right? We lean on our parents' testimonies until we can kind of gain one of our own. But she never really felt like she had a testimony of her own. And so that's what, when she says, I had to go through this, she really did. Like she had to kind of strip her testimony down to the bare bones and start from scratch. And so she had to take everything that she thought she knew and rebuild it on things that she now knows to be true. And I still remember, like, it was amazing to see that, because she talked about this as well, the very first time that she was kind of like, I feel that God is real. I feel that God is there. And that's how it all started, which is interesting because if you look at like the missionary lessons, that's oftentimes the first thing that we talk to people about is what's your belief in God? Because everything else kind of stems from that. And when you kind of place your focus on that, everything else sort of just falls into place.
Awesome, I love that. That's so cool. I wanted to ask you, how how is your marriage before and after? If I can ask is be so bold as to ask you such a personal question, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tiff and I have always had a really good marriage. There have never, until those couple of years, we had never, like, divorce was never on the table. We had never had a fight that was so bad that it almost ended in divorce or anything like that. We've always been very open. We've always been very honest with each other. We have helped each other through things. We supported each other through things. And so honestly, our marriage has always been really, really good. It was rocky for a couple of years during that period of time, but I would say afterwards, if it were possible, I feel like we're even stronger than we were before because we have seen each other at our absolute worst and most vulnerable times. And we thought that up until then, it's like, oh, you've seen me at my worst, you've seen me at my worst, you've seen me at my worst. But until those couple of years, we had no idea what our most vulnerable state was. And even like through that, like we have been even more open, especially with like sharing our thoughts, sharing our emotions, sharing our concerns. And not that we didn't do that before, but I feel like it's even enhanced it further since that time.
Do you feel like it gives you strength for the next crisis?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of like, oh, I've been through this. So I know that I can handle it again. We've handled this. And if we can make it through this, we can make it through the next thing that gets thrown our way, whatever that might be. Not that I'm asking for anything to happen. I know that sometimes God will give you a trial when you ask for a trial. We're not asking for any trials right now. We're still recovering from our last ones. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So I ask people this all the time, every time I interview people on our episodes. Are you glad it happened? How do you respond to that sort of thing? I mean, is it better to have it not have happened? Is it better, I mean, because you feel more strong now? Are you glad it happened? That kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that's really kinda difficult to answer because in short, the answer is yes, right? Every time you go through a trial, you say, "Okay, I learned something from this. I'm better off because of this. I have come closer to God, come closer to my family, come closer to something. I've improved because of whatever has happened." And I feel like this has been such an amazing thing for us because when you've been that close to divorce, it kind of makes all of the other problems a lot smaller. You know, like the little day-to-day things, the finances, oh, you didn't put your pants in the laundry basket. You left your bowl out from your cereal this morning. It makes those problems like almost laughable. Like the little pet peeves we used to have, it's like that's so dumb compared to what could be. And so when you go through something where you're literally on the verge of like you are at the decision like, are we doing this? Are we going to keep staying together or are we getting divorced? And it's at that point where you realize you've kind of hit rock bottom. And so do I wish we could have gone about it a different way? Yeah, of course. I definitely wish we could have gone about it a different way to learn these things. But the amount of things that we have learned make it absolutely worth it.
That is so awesome. Now, Tiff brought up that it was the marriage counseling that was extremely helpful, and it was actually probably what she might consider a turning point. I want to hear your perspective on the idea of marriage counseling, how it helped you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it was amazing. And she had told you about how she well, both I mean, we were both matched up with this amazing therapist. So, we were going to therapy 3 days a week. She had her individual session, I had my individual session, and then we have a couple session. And, so my work, like, they were really great to do that. Like, I would, I'd have to go into work late because I was going through, marriage counseling, but they were really super helpful in that. But the counselor that we worked with, he was just so he told us in our very, very first session, I don't like to beat around the bush. I don't like to waste your time. You guys are spending a lot of money to be here. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend a problem doesn't exist. Like I'm not like I'm going to call you out on things. And there were so many times that he did exactly that. Because, like I said, we look at Tiff and we say, "Oh, she's the bad guy. She did this and she did that." But I still remember the times where he would look at me and he'd say, "Kody, you are being completely unreasonable right now. Like you have got to stop acting like this. Like you've got to put your ego behind you and you've got to stop um, pretending that Tiff is the source of your problem because she's not. Like you're contributing to this too, remember?" And I was like, "Holy smokes!" Like he did like he was very very open and honest, which we needed that. We needed somebody to slap us upside the head, both of us, and say, "Hey, get your life in order, figure this out." But she had alluded to that one specific therapy session that was really, really beneficial for her. I had some sessions of my own and some individual sessions that were super beneficial for me because, like I said, in addition to our marriage stuff, I was also going through my own things with anxiety and whatnot. I have anxiety, and maybe we should have another episode and we'll talk about that. So,
It's good.
but anyway, there was things that he was helping me with personally, as well as in our marriage. But our marriage counseling together was very very insightful. It was very very helpful, and he would help us to work through issues that we really kind of didn't even know that we had. Like he would ask us questions and we'd kind of bring things up. And I remember he kept telling Tiff, like he kept just saying, "Tiff, you are really angry and you need to look, you've got people around you that just absolutely love you." And then he would kind of tell me kind of the same thing. He'd say like, "Look, Kody, you are not innocent either. Like you have things that you need to work through." So the fact that, anybody who is concerned about marriage counseling, like, "Oh, that sounds like a really bad thing." It's really not. It's an amazing thing. Even if you don't have like major uh, marital problems, you going through therapy is an amazing thing. He really, really helped us because I remember one particular session that it may have even been the same one that Tiff referred to in her session, but he grabbed like a little stack of papers that he had on his desk sitting next to him because we were doing this over telehealth. It was like a telehealth type of therapy session. And he grabbed a stack of papers and he said, okay, we're going to decide this right now. What is on the table? So let's start with this piece of paper right here. Is divorce on the table? And we both kind of looked at each other and we were kind of like, we don't want it to be. Like, that's kind of why we're here. And he said, is it on the table? That, damn it, yes or no? Is it on the table? And we sat silent for probably 30 seconds and we just looked at each other and we're like, well, we really don't want to get divorced. We want to stay together. That's why we keep coming to therapy. And he said, okay, well, we're going to sit here until you guys know what the answer is. What is it? Or is divorce on the table? Because if it is, we're going to go a completely different version or a completely different way with this conversation. And we finally looked at each other and we said, no, it's not. So he said, okay, we're going to take this paper and we're going to put it over here. It's off the table. So now we're going to go through, and he went through a couple of other things like, is this on the table? Is this on the table? You know, is it okay to, you know, for Tiff to keep drinking? Is it okay for Kody to keep going to church? Is it okay? And like, is this on the table? And the only thing that we put off the table was divorce. Everything else was like, okay, we can work through this, but we don't want divorce. And it was at that point we kind of realized like, yeah, we really don't want to get divorced. We don't want to leave each other. We still want to be together. Like, even with all these other problems, we still wanted to be together.
That is fantastic. And I can tell you, having worked through counselors myself, I've had 4 or 5 in my life. It's so rad when you find the right one. And it sounds to me like this was just the perfect one for the two of you. And I love that. I love that way he goes about it because he commits you to that. That's such great stuff. Now, I wanted to ask you because I always we're kind of I feel like we're kind of winding up. I wanted to ask if there was any other things that you thought that I didn't ask you about that you want to make sure you put out there for people to hear.
Yeah. So honestly, it's kind of hard because like there's so much that I wish that I could I could say and whatnot. But I think that the biggest thing is kind of what I had already mentioned is just, don't ever assume that you know what someone is going through. We might have a little bit of an idea, but like even other people who are going through similar faith crises and whatnot, even their situation is going to be different than mine and Tiff's. And so the biggest thing is to just continue, like that stake president said, just continue to love people, just continue to love them and support them and help them. Don't assume that you know what's going on, but just be there for them because that's what they need.
I love that. Thank you so much. It kind of feels like, hey, we've got the path, we've got the easy road over here. We can just call it quits, or we've got the difficult road. I'll tell you what, let's take each other by the hand. Let's go down this difficult road. Let's see how it turns out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kody. I appreciate it very much. As usual, I mean, we love to hear your comments. I mean, I'm not a healthcare professional. Kody is. He alluded to that. We're actually, I think we are going to talk about with Kody in a future episode, some things related to that. But I do want to make sure you know there are therapists out there. There are professionals out there who can help you with these things. A podcast might give you some ideas that you can act on. I think that's great. But don't take what we're talking about as, medical advice and things like that. That's not what it's meant for. We want to help you get to a point where you can reach out to therapists, where you can talk to psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and things like that. I can tell you in my life, it has been absolutely phenomenal and fantastic. I just want to tell Kody, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. As always, Dave at navigatingabrokenvessel.com. If you want to send me an email, Facebook, Instagram, Navigating a Broken Vessel. We would love to hear from you as well. Thanks so much.